Very much, Andrea, and welcome everybody. We're in early February, about halfway through the ski season, and we've had our ups and downs this ski season, but we started off pretty vigorously with a lot of snow, and we've had a little bit of a pause in part of January with the dry spell. I want to thank Andrea and Brant's coming up here at the end, but we're going to go through a little bit of weather first. Keep you up to date on what's happening in the short and long term. We're going to be talking snow and how the forecast is panning out so far and what to look ahead with. We're actually looking pretty good in the long term. It's been a La Nina winter. But first, I want to show you what it looked like today in many of the ski areas. Now, it was sunny skies, and I want you to see if you can guess the areas. Now, this one to the left here, I'll give you a quick little hint, and then we'll have the answers. And are we giving away a car on this, maybe? No, we're not. No cars. We're not giving away any prizes, but just for your own competition here. This one on the left, what ski area is that? That's the Goat Rocks Wilderness in the background. This one in the central or in the north, I should say, center and part of the picture is this chairlift, and that's the highest chairlift in Washington State. The one to the right is possibly going to be in our 51st state. This one to the lower left is you can see a freeway from the chairlift there, and one to the right here, it gets really good snow when there's a convergence zone. All right, everybody pretty much know what those are. Here's the answers: White on the left, Crystal in the middle upper, of course Whistler on the right, and Summit Central on the lower left, and Stevens on the lower right. But here's a couple of more difficult ones. What do you think that one is to the left? Anybody know that one? And couple of our sponsors, one lower center is one of our sponsors, and upper right is one of our sponsors. Here's the answer: Mission Ridge to the left, Silver to the right, and 49 degrees, all groomed up this morning, ready to go. That looks pretty nice. All right, just a little quiz, see how well you know your ski areas. As far as knowing your snow, so here's how it looks so far. This is what's called the snow water equivalent, and we call it SWE, S-W-E. And what it is the amount of water in the snowpack, and it's a good proxy for how much snowpack there is in a given area, a given basin. And the forecast was this area through the northwest of at or above normal. And so these areas in blue are at or above normal. Blue, the dark blue is well above normal. Here in Washington, we've got near or above in the southern half of the state and kind of slightly below in the central and northern part of the state. As you get over farther to the east, get better snowpack, but it's all adequate. And Tahoe's hurting a little bit, but they're going to get some new snow. Colorado and Utah have been a mixed bag so far this season. You get farther south, you notice this red area. So southern Utah, southern Colorado have been hurting. So that's how it's been going. Idaho's been doing very well. Brundage and Sun Valley and central Idaho doing quite well. And then over here at Targhee and Jackson Hole, they've been doing quite well too. So that gives you an idea of what's going on. Here's another look at how that works. These are individual stations, weather reporting stations, measurements stations, and snow measurement stations. And the red indicates, the red and orange is below, the darker blues are above. So you can see Oregon's done quite well, Bachelor into Shasta and eastern Oregon into Brundage, and then parts of southern Idaho done quite well, and parts of Montana too. So you can see that. By the way, that's me on the right with a halo, St. Lawrence to you. Okay, let's get that straight. We've got also a look at the Corral Pass. This is a measuring station near Crystal, so it doesn't represent the entire Cascades. It's at about 6,000 feet, so it's the upper elevations. It's the lower elevations that have gotten hurt a little bit more. But what I like it shows you what normal is. That's the green line, right? And then the black line is what we've had. So if you look at November, we had a really good start here. Got above normal really quickly. And by December, we were really above normal. Christmas was above normal. And then January, we started to taper off a little bit. We got a little bit in early January, and then lately it's flatlined, kind of mid-January to right about now. We had a little bit about a week ago, but a flatline there. So we went from above to near normal to below, and now we're starting to climb back up. So we're a little bit below, at least at this particular station now. Some areas like Crystal and White are above normal right now. Baker is near normal. Stevens is just a little bit below normal. Snoqualmie's a bit below normal. But overall, we're in much better shape than any of the other skiers, or most of the other skiers in the United States. Although Oregon's doing really well too. Hood area and Bake and Bachelor doing very well. So they've had a lot of good snow there too. And remember, the El Nino, I'm sorry, the La Nina, that's what we're in, tends to push this jet stream north and bring down colder air. And so we've been getting this cold air, but we haven't been getting as recently the wetness mixed in with it, which causes the snow. So we've been sort of part of La Nina has been happening, but early in the season, we were definitely getting the cool wet pattern. So far, I think it's verified. Here's what it looks like the last 30 days. So we've had a kind of a dry spell through the Northwest in the last 30 days, except for this area from Northern California through parts of Oregon and Idaho into Montana. Right there, you can see that strip. And then it gets dry again as you get down to parts of California, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. And then on the right side, you can see the temperature. It's been cold lately. So we've been cold, but not much moisture. And so that's been what the trend has been the last couple of days. Now, we're going to move out of this cold pattern and get some moisture. It starts to come by Thursday and Friday, and then to a greater degree by Sunday and Monday. So if you got Monday off, it's looking good. Here's what the forecast is in a general sense for the rest of the ski season. That is the rest of February, March, and April. And it's pretty much reflecting La Nina. That is above normal precipitation here in the Northwest, below in the Southwest, in between in California, equal chances, but below normal temperatures too in the Northwest. And that means when the moisture does come, it usually comes with cooler temperatures. So that means high quality snow as well. And so far, I think it's been verifying pretty well so far. We won't know for sure until April 1. That's when we sort out the whole mess. Here's what the forecast is for El Nino versus La Nina. And again, we're in La Nina. That's the blue line. So 90% chance of we're going to have it. We've definitely got it. Still continuing. And you can see it's dropping off the chances of La Nina. And then by the end of the season, April, it starts to go into a neutrals mode and goes through the summer that way. And then even looking next fall, it's not clear, but it looks like we might be into sort of a neutral mode next fall. Probably not El Nino, either neutral or La Nina. That's my guess at this point. But if you're thinking about a season pass, we start to think about them in another month and a half or so. I'd go for it. It's not El Nino. That's the one typically gives us problem. Neutral and La Nina generally are pretty good. All right, here's the forecast short term. So tomorrow if you're going skiing, it's been breezy, so bundle up for sure. I saw it looked like snow blowing off the top of Mount Rainier today. It was just really howling up there. Thursday, there might be a little snow. The main storm system is going to the south of us into Oregon and California, so we're just getting a little bit of leftovers. And so we might get a dusting at Crystal and White. Snow level will be about 500 feet, pretty low. And Saturday and Sunday, the storm track continues down into California. So we're going to get a sun with clouds mix. Snow level starts to creep upward though. So we get out of this really cold pattern, but we don't overshoot it too much. By Sunday and Monday, we're looking better. Sunday, we'll go through a transition with the moisture really moving in. So there might be a little snow rain mix, maybe even freezing rain on the lowest slopes, mainly at the pass, but you can see the snow nudges upward from 2,000 to 4,000 feet. But then later Sunday and Monday, bingo, powder day possible. It's a little too far to sort out the details, but right now, I think later Sunday or Monday, we're going to get a pretty good round of snow. The snow level is going to be moderately low at 3,000 feet, so that's about normal for this time of year, and 3 to 8 inches. There is some upside potential in this snowfall. It could be 8 to 12. It could be on the lower side, 2 to 7. But I think we'll get some snow later Sunday, Monday. So timing's a little bit sketchy right now. But right now, if I was planning, I'd go for Monday. All right. So again, this is that La Nina pattern. We're still in it for the next month or so, and then we've got to go toward this neutral pattern. All right, we're going to move onward then to All About Boots, a Q&A session with Brant Howell, and he's a boot fitter extraordinaire from Sturtevant with thousands of feet experience. And thank you and welcome to the Powder Poobah program, and hopefully we can get some good insight from you. A question I have off the top of my head after you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work experience, but I want to know what's the biggest complaint people have and how do you address it? But first, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, Brent.
Um, Happy to be here. Thank you for having me. As far as myself, I've been selling and fitting ski boots for over 30 years, and I've worked at a handful of different retailers around the Seattle metropolitan area. I've been with Sturtevant now for about, I want to say 13, 14 years, something like that. And I really enjoy the crew there. They're all great people. Before I started in the retail side of things, I was a full-time ski instructor in Sun Valley. Quite enjoyed that. That's a great job to have, skiing
I
every
think
day
so.
and getting paid for it. That's cool. Anyway, to your question, Larry, I'd have to say the probably the biggest complaint with skiers is my toes hurt. Their toes get jammed up in the front of their boot for a variety of reasons. And usually, what those individuals want us to do is give them more toe room. And it's possible, but making a boot longer is very challenging and very restricted. You can't do a whole lot. You can gain a few millimeters in most cases, and some of these new, much lighter weight boots are easier to stretch, but we have to be careful about disrupting the symmetry of the toe area of the boot because it has to interface your binding. And if you disrupt that too much, then you could compromise safety. So we're always real conscious about what we can and cannot do with ski boots. Does that help?
That helps. Yeah, I was just curious what the big what the complainers are complaining about.
Yeah, usually it's my toes hurt. And more often than not, that comes from intermediate level and lesser skiers, intro level skiers. They're still working on their technique, their stance, their balance. And if that is consistently what we call in the back seat, yeah, your toes are going to hurt for sure. One thing that I personally, as a boot fitter, am pretty adamant about is controlling the flexibility of the foot within the boot. If you don't take measures to do that the best you can, you're always going to be fighting some issues, a
Andrew,
variety of issues.
Andrew, you seen any questions?
I know specifically people talked about pressure points and buckles, and someone said, and I remember this one, they said, my boots are fine, but when I get to a steep, I have to crank them down again. Is that okay, or should my boots be the same on different slopes? As a ski instructor and a boot guy, go.
I think if you've got a good footbed or a good foundation in the boot underneath your foot, then I think you should remain fairly stable in the boot without having to crank your buckles.
Yeah, somebody's got their microphone on, so check your mic, please.
Whoops.
There.
Okay. So again, if you've got a footbed in place, your foot should remain fairly stable. Your foot and your ankle should remain fairly stable when you're edging. If you feel like you need more from the boot when you get into a challenging slope or what have you, then I would recommend that you get that additional pressure from the upper buckles of the boot rather than down on the foot. And if this is a fairly consistent problem or issue, we do have volume shims that we can put inside your shell underneath your liner to snug everything up. It is not my favorite practice to fit boots with buckles, with buckle pressure. That tends to do nothing more than shut down blood flow, potentially increase pressure on certain nerves. All of those things can cause you to feel numb, cold, what have you.
Okay.
What do boots wear out? How long can you expect to have a pair of boots?
Never.
The first thing on a boot that's going to give up is the liner. It's the softest part of the boot. So liners, typically a production liner from most boots, even a very high-end boot. We like to measure the longevity in skier days of activity. So if you're a skier that skis 20, 25 days a year, you can probably expect about 5 years out of your liner before your liner starts to give up. When it starts to give up, what you'll notice is just what we were talking about buckle pressure. You will feel an uncontrollable urge to clamp the buckles down tighter. And that's usually an indication that the liner is starting to give up the ghost. It's starting to thin down in certain areas. It's starting to compress. The foam that it consists of will compress. How do you combat that? If your boot shell is still in good shape, if the buckles are sound, they're still tight and they're not loose and rattling around on the shell. That can happen when rivets start to stretch out and stuff. What you can do is you can replace your liner. There's a lot of aftermarket liners on the market. A lot of them are heat moldable foams. Some of them are heat moldable cork that's actually in a soft resin when it's heated up. I've actually got some of those. I can show you. This is a foam injected liner that I had done for my own boot. I've probably had this liner now for about, oh, I don't know, 6 years or so. Okay, there's a liner. So that one is a foam injected liner. Okay, let's fire away at the questions then.
Kristen, how easy is it to make more room for a high instep for vertically thick feet? Kirsten, if you want to speak up, raise your hand. Brant, does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. We run into that often. So for somebody that has what I deem a tall foot, when we measure, if we actually measure your instep, and that measurement does not correlate fairly closely to the measurement of the overall length of your foot, then we have to sometimes split the difference when we're sizing a boot. But then there's also other things that can be considered. We can remove a little bit of material off the bottom of the Zeppa, or excuse me, off the top of the what's called a Zeppa board. It is an artificial floor in the boot that can be removed. If you grind a little material off of that, sometimes you can drop the foot enough to get relief. Sometimes we find that we need to size somebody up. If I measure your foot and you measure a 25.5 in overall length, and then I try to put you in a size 25.5 boot, and your instep is being crushed before you even buckle it, that's no bueno. That is not a good scenario. So what we want to do is if I measure your instep, your foot is measuring a 25.5 and I measure your instep and it turns out that your instep is actually a 27.5, I'm going to possibly, not for certain, but I'm going to possibly split the difference and put you in a size 26.5 boot. If your toes are not touching the end of the boot, that's not the end of the world. If your toes are touching the end of your boot, that's acceptable as long as it doesn't go much beyond touch. Touch versus pressure, that's a difference. Does that answer the question?
That was good. Deborah's asking about slippery socks for stiff new boots.
Yes, there are socks that are like that, that they use particular yarns in the construction of those socks that will slide on a broader variety of fabrics within the liner and possibly the top sheet of the footbed that you're using so that it becomes a little easier to get into your boot. If you're using an overlap closure boot, those are without question more difficult to put on than, say, a cabrio style boot. Now I'm probably talking Greek to most of you, but
That's okay. We can
um,
gloss over that.
Yeah, I have a Cabrio boot here. I can show that, show you how it differs from a conventional boot. For example, this boot shell is a more conventional boot from Lang. This is a 4 buckle. The boot actually, see if I can do this. It spreads right there, and down in the lower part where your foot lives, it is an overlapping closure, and 4 buckles, two on the bottom, two on the up on the ankle and the leg to hold the boot on you. Those boots are a bit more difficult to put on, especially if you're aging like me and you're losing some of your flexibility. It becomes more difficult. And hence the reason that I invested in another boot and got a Cabrio style boot. Back to the question about the instep, the really tall foot. This is oftentimes a really good solution for that type of a foot because by design, this boot does not close with an overlap. It is open. The lower part of the boot is open all the way through your instep area, and how the boot actually closes is with a third piece, and that's where the name Cabrio comes in.
How do you,
It's
hang on, how do you spell that?
Cabrio.
And who makes that?
This is a Del Bello product. The original Cabrio design was from, as far as I know at least, going back in boot history, the original Cabrio was the old Reichley Flex-On boot. A lot of people, Bill Johnson used to race in that boot. Our own Tracy Gibbons used to race in that boot years ago. It was a very well-loved boot, and Glenn Plake, the man with the hairdo,
There.
he used to ski in a Cabrio style boot, the Reichley boot. And then other companies recognized the success and came in and tried to copy it. In fact, that boot that I just showed you was Glenn Plake actually helped develop that boot for Del Bello. Different designs do different things, and sometimes they can be very beneficial for your particular fitting needs.
And so on that note, Kirsten earlier, she said, Brant, you answered my question exactly. David now says, hey, my Scarpa F1 XT touring boots are made of some high-tech Garamid polymer. Can this stuff be pushed out to widen the boot a bit? David, if you want to pop on, we got 10 more, 20 more questions, but David, does that make sense to you, Brant?
Absolutely.
Okay, go.
Time.
It's your turn,
My-
David.
if you want my explanation to that, a Grillamid is the name of the plastic. Grillamid is a very stiff and very lightweight plastic, and the reason they use that material is for those boots that are designed as a hybrid that can go uphill as well as downhill. And of course, for going uphill, just like any other activity, like a lightweight bicycle, for example, it's beneficial if that product is lighter weight. They do that with the Grillamid, and there's another material called Pebax. And most ski boots are made out of, and I'm talking alpine ski boots, most of those ski boots are made out of a polyurethane plastic. And there are variations of that. That blue ski boot that I showed you a few minutes ago is made out of a material called polyether. It has a higher element of rebound, if that makes any sense to you all. Grillamid, the only problem I have with Grillamid personally, as a boot fitter, is that it doesn't have a lot of rebound. In fact, that material has no memory. So if we heat up that material and push it out, we have to be really ultra careful, because if we go a little too far, we can't bring it back. With polyurethane, we can. If we go too far, if we don't like the result that we got when we stretch and shape that plastic, we can reheat it and it will largely come right back to its original shape. Polyurethane is usually the favored material to work on for boot fitters that are customizing and shaping shells I will say this. It is an extremely rare occurrence that we sell a ski boot to somebody that doesn't need some form of modification. Ski boots do not fit anybody almost. I'm a rare exception to that rule, but ski boots typically don't fit anybody right out of the box. We need to do a few things. A footbed is certainly a number one on my list addition to a ski boot. If you're not doing that to your boot, whatever that boot is, you need to reconsider, because if we don't have a good footbed underneath, your foot is quite literally a loose cannon in that boot.
We've got some really good questions about buckles, Brant. So when you buy your boots, they come with a standard footbed that is basically flat, correct?
Going to show you one right here. So these are put in. This little product right here came in one of my ski boots. This is very typical. They're very flimsy, relatively nondescript in their shape, and they just don't have any integrity. And they're intended from the manufacturer to be thrown away and replaced with something better. Whether that is a off-the-shelf drop-in, trim to fit, whatever you want to call it, type of a footbed, that is still a far better upgrade or a better upgrade than just going with the original. And then, of course, the ultimate, depending, and I help people by asking, how much do you ski? If you ski 20 days a year, or if money isn't a big object for you, the ultimate is to have a custom footbed done. And there are a lot of different programs on the market. At Sturtevant, we sell predominantly Sidas is the brand name, Sidas. They're a company out of France. The reason that I love them is because we're able to get a tremendous amount of definition with that format, and they've got a lot of integrity built into them as well. It's been my personal choice for several years now. Superfeed is another good one. P is another good one. DFP, Dynamic Foot Positioning, is out of Utah. The parent company of Sturtevant sells predominantly the DFP brand. It's a great product. I personally think that the Cetus has some advantages, and that's why we've chosen to sell it at Sturtevant.
Steve has a good question. So, is there anything that can be done about overwhelming pressure in the back of the boot on the calves? Okay, so daughter, age 19, and this could go for all ages, is an intermediate skier, and from time to time it feels like her lower legs are getting choked off. She tries to loosen the buckles, but it doesn't help. So it's calves and buckles, and I've seen this conversation in the boot room before.
Oh, yes, frequently. It brings up some other issues. Without seeing her boot, it would be guesswork on my part. I would need to see what the boot is. If she is in a boot that is, for example, a men's product, that may be part of the problem. Is it insurmountable? No, probably not, but it would require a bit of work. We can heat up the top of the cuff of the boot. The cuff is the very uppermost part of the boot. We can heat that up and stretch it a little bit. We can elevate her heel inside the boot by putting a heel wedge. Typically, it's about 1/4 of an inch thick at the thickest portion at the back. That will elevate her, and as you can all tell, the muscle mass in your leg tapers as it gets closer to the ankle. It gets smaller as it gets closer to the ankle. So if we elevate the heel, we put a smaller portion of the leg in the cuff section of the boot, so that can relieve pressure. One of the biggest differences between men's and women's boots, for example, at point of design and point of manufacture, is that a woman's boot is shorter in the cuff, because typically a woman's leg is shorter from knee to ankle than a man's. And so the muscle mass on that shorter leg is closer to the floor or the bottom of the boot, and it's going to feel tighter. If she's in a men's boot, she's not doing herself any favors. But until we notice what that boot is, then we really have to evaluate each scenario. But that's why we have a custom fit center at Sturtevants. Like I said before, boots don't fit anybody perfectly right out of the box.
Thanks. Steve says that was really helpful. Kevin says, what does a strong but petite woman do when the smallest adult boot, a 22.5, is too big? What does a strong skiing woman do about boots? Tracy, whatever, is magical, right?
Tracy skis in a 22.5.
I'm a 20.
You're, I think, in a 23.5, if memory serves me.
Yeah.
There are a couple of companies out there that actually make a true 21.5. Those companies are Lang and Dalbello. I don't know off the top of my head of anybody else yet that is making a true 21.5. It's about the smallest boot you can get for an adult skier and that would have the kind of performance features that an aggressive skier would want. But they can be found. You just have to shop early in the season because most buyers don't buy a lot of those. They'll buy a couple and when they're gone,
Yeah.
outside of special order, that is.
Right, which is tricky. So Joe is asking, is there a specific type of boot you would recommend for a beginner to intermediate skier who's now getting back into skiing after a multi-year break? Learned on narrow skis and would like to be able to technically ski better as opposed to speed right away. Yeah.
I can throw out some recommendations depending on. I know one of the questions I saw earlier, the pre-submitted questions, one of them was, how do you determine flex on a boot? What are the good markers to determine how stiff or how soft a boot to buy? It is very critical in your skiing technique to be able to flex your ankles. If you can't flex your ankles in, the boot is not there to stifle all movement. It's there to protect you from injury. The movements that you make, the flexing movements, are going to increase or decrease the pressure that you're applying to the ski when the ski is edged and moving through the snow. Who is it then that needs a really stiff boot? An accomplished, aggressive skier. A softer boot would be more appropriate for a developing skier, whether that means a beginner or a good intermediate level skier. You want something that's, and then I guess I should identify for you what the flex index range is. When you buy boots in today's world, you can expect to see an adult product start at the lowest flex of about 70 or 80, 70 for women, 80 for men. 90 becomes stiffer. 100 becomes stiffer yet. 110, 120, 130 is about the stiffest boot any recreational skier would need. There are a handful of products out there that are like 140. A World Cup racer, Lindsey Vonn, for example, is going to be skiing on a 150 flex boot, but it's a World Cup racing boot, and they have to be literally sculpted on the inside to fit that particular foot. 99.9% of us recreational skiers don't need anything remotely close to that.
Yeah. Thank you. So Lynn is asking about liners. Are some liners warmer than others? I am just going to just shout it out that I get cold. I get cold feet and I get cold hands. And I've had heated boots since 2016. So Lynn is asking, are some liners warmer than others? Lynn, if you want to chime in and get in on this, let me know.
Yes, absolutely. There's a company called Intuition. They're out of Vancouver, BC. They are using a closed cell foam in the production of their liners. They're a heat moldable material. So they are heated up, so they become quite soft and stretchy. We put the person in there, we get a very customized fit. And yes, they are in fact considerably warmer than 90% of the production liners that come from the manufacturers because simply they're using a superior foam material to produce that liner and they retain heat better. To Andrea's point, if you are suffering from Raynaud syndrome, and that you'd have to see a medical professional to get that clinically diagnosed, but if that is the case, you typically are not producing heat in your extremities. Your circulatory system is just not doing it for you. Those kind of situations, you need an artificial source of heat. Oftentimes, Andrea put heated footbeds in. There are heated socks that can be bought. None of them are cheap, I will tell you that. It's an expensive add-on, but well worth it if you want to get out and enjoy skiing on a cold day and you suffer from that syndrome.
I've had lens socks. The heated socks are awesome. Brant, do you have a zip fit liner to show and comment about, Julie?
I do not, unfortunately. I don't. I've actually personally never tried Zip Fit. I know that they come very highly recommended from a lot of skiers that I respect. We don't sell them at Sturtevant's. They're one of the more expensive liners on the market. And I'm thinking that might be the reason that we don't sell them, just purely from a cost perspective. We sell the Cetus brand and we sell the, where did that Cetus one go? This is a heat moldable foam Cetus liner that I have. I molded it for my Lang boot. But the Intuition, we sell a variety of those. The wrap style liners are really popular because that in itself can help you get in and out of a boot a little easier just because of the overlapping wraparound liner. Where did that liner go? I lost it. Oh, there it is.
So also, while we're on that, Martin Katzberg asks, what age should the whole boot be replaced if the liner is old?
If the liner's old and you're starting to see some significant wear on the sole of the boot, particularly the heel, if it's an older product, it may or may not have a replaceable sole piece. And if that's the case, then when that wear starts to get to a certain degree, you're going to need to replace the whole boot. It doesn't become cost effective to put a new liner in an old boot like that if the boot shell itself is starting to wear. Also, check your buckles, take them in your hand and wiggle them back and forth. If there's movement, that's not a good sign for longevity. If they're sound, if they're still tight and secure on the shell, and you're not seeing that wear on the heel of the boot, on the sole, then the shell is probably fine. Put a new liner in it and carry on.
Here it is. Kevin says, yeah, zip fit liners are more expensive than the boot. People like the cork because it doesn't pack out like the foam. Okay. And
true, and a lot of people love that shearling liner they put down in the toe area too. That's very cozy.
Is that a good thing?
Oh yeah.
Who has that?
That's a zip fit feature.
Some people asked about buckling. How tight should I buckle my boots? Do I need to get rid of my boots because I'm buckling too much? Kevin says, hey, zip fit or the Fisher equivalent.
Yeah, Fisher might be in cahoots with Zip Fit for all I know. I'm not real sure on that. Again, because I don't sell the product, I don't have a lot of insight. I have zip fit liners before. People bring them into the store and ask to have a fitting done. We can do that at our shop, but we don't sell the product. Yeah. It's a good product. There's no question. Let's see, what was that other question? Buckling, right?
Lisa sent her question. Lisa says, I have a narrow heel with a boot that has been fitted, but the heel is still lifting. The boots are great, otherwise fit-wise. Lisa, if you want to get in and talk. Hello?
Okay. Hi. Yeah, I bought my boots through Sturtevant's and I was fitted by Otto, who was fabulous, but my heel is still lifting and it's a big problem actually. So I don't know what to do. I've moved the buckles all the way over. Everything's as tight as it can get.
Can you tell me what the boot is?
Yeah, it's a Nordica. My length is 24.5. It's a 95 flex,
Okay.
low volume.
Okay. Must be the Pro.
It's the higher one. It's this year's.
If it hasn't already been done, there are some die cut foam pieces that we buy for bolstering the effectiveness of that liner. They have to be very strategically placed on that liner for them to be effective. But that is probably one of the first things I would look at. I might also look at, I mentioned to a question earlier, I think it was too tight in the calf for a young woman, that we would elevate the heel. We can do that for a different reason, your reason specifically, because the heel pocket in a ski boot, I'm going to show you with my hands, if you can see the screen, the heel pocket in a boot is shaped like this. So if we elevate your heel higher up into the heel
Okay.
pocket, it gets narrower, so it gets tighter on your foot. So that is the heel wedge thing is a magic bullet that we boot fitters use for a variety of reasons. If you elevate the heel in a boot, it also shifts your foot back and can reduce some of your toe touch and gain you a millimeter or two of additional toe space. It can snug the heel. It can relieve pressure on the calf. That's why I call it the magic bullet. It's just one of those features that, depending on what the problem is, it can oftentimes help. If you go in and see Otto again, find out what has been done already. It's almost impossible. I won't go as far as to say impossible, but it's very difficult to actually make the shell of the boot narrower in that area. You would have to get it really hot to do that.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, I hope that helps. And I don't know what all Otto has done for you at this point, but if I'm ever in, or if you want to go back in, talk to Otto again, we'll certainly relook at things.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Sure.
Lisa. Okay, so next, Rich D says, hey, I had a ski boot. I love to ski. And a number of years ago, when I buckled down, oh, Rich, I buckled it down on a very cold day and the shell cracked wide open.
Wow,
Ouch.
that must have been a cold day. I have rarely seen that, but yes, it does happen.
Okay. Jim, do you ever recommend using spray silicone to make it easier to remove boots at the end of the day? I have Lang's Intuition liners and they're very hard to take off when they're cold. This has come up.
Yeah, I'm not sure how healthy that would be for the materials in your liner. I don't know if that would cause breakdown in the fabrics or whatnot, or even breakdown in the foam within behind those fabrics. Some of it is just technique. You get your foot out of a boot. I mentioned earlier that I'm no spring chicken anymore. I'm 69 years old and I'm losing some of my flexibility, and I still insist on skiing in a high performance boot because that's what I'm accustomed to. They're no pleasure to get out of at the end of the day when they're frozen. The best thing you can do, I think, is to get in your car while your car is warming up and let that boot thaw just a little bit before you try to get your foot out of it, opening all the buckles up and letting some warm air come in the boot might help that liner soften a little bit as well. But what I do is open up all the buckles and then I just make a paddle or a shoehorn out of my hand and put it behind my calf and just push the boot off quickly as possible.
To tell clients to do to prepare in advance of coming to get fit for boots besides take a shower? And I will say clip your toenails. Go, Brant.
Yeah, most of us aren't squeamish about stuff like that. Make sure you bring a ski sock with you. Something that can be pulled up above your calf, at least to your knee, so that we can see the lower leg easily. As far as alignment goes, we always like to do a minor cuff alignment. Make sure that your leg is centered in the cuff of the boot when we close it up. If you got a big old baggy pair of jeans or something like that, those are easy enough to roll up and get them above your calf, get them up to your knee. But yeah, that would be the biggest thing. Type of leggings that you're going to wear. Ideally, we don't like to see people tucking their long underwear, their base layer down inside the boot. That tends to be problematic. Develops pressure points on the front of the shin, sometimes on or around the ankle. So it's best that what goes in the boot is your sock and your foot and nothing else.
Good. That's a good one. Tom says, talk about boot forward lean angle and how it relates to stance and control.
Okay, sure. Ski boot designers probably 10, 12 years ago started relaxing what used to be a very aggressive forward stance angle to the tune of neighborhood of 16 to 18 degrees forward lean angle in the boot. All that does in today's world, there was a time when that was necessary because we were skiing very long skis, 205 centimeters, 207, 210 centimeter long skis that had relatively, compared to today's skis, very little shape. And we wanted and needed to be in a more aggressive stance on that type of a ski to get things done, to get the carving effect out of the skis. We don't need that anymore. What caused the change in boot design was the change in ski design. And quite frankly, when you're in a boot that addresses your leg in a 17 or 18 degree angle, it's going to do nothing but just wear you out quick. It's like putting you in a squat position all day. And what the more upright, more relaxed stance angles do for you, if your stance angle is 11 or 12 degrees instead of 16 to 18 degrees, you can stand up and relax your leg muscles much more often throughout the course of the day. Now you can still flex and get into it. It's absolutely essential to flex your ankle when you're skiing in order to stay centered, in order to stay balanced while in motion. You have to flex your ankle. If you don't, you end up in the back seat and you end up fighting the whole game. You're fighting every element. Does that help? Does that bring any insight? What changed with ski development was the much more aggressive geometry that the skis have, the side cut that makes a ski turn essentially. We can stand up and relax a lot more readily on it, and you get a broader range of vertical motion too. It helps you be smoother on the snow.
Yes, I think that's good. And then Rich adds a comment. Yeah, bindings also have various for lean angles. Okay. Ooh, someone got black toe. How do you prevent black toe? I've seen it. Ugh.
First, make sure your nails are trimmed before the ski season starts. If your nails are left long, it increases the sensitivity at the cuticle. One little nasty bump on the toenail, if your nail is too long, will cause a black nail. No footbed. If you're skiing in a boot that has an original stock footbed in it, you're not doing yourself any favors. Your foot is going to slip around much more frequently. One mistake, none of us are perfect skiers, not even Lindsey Vonn. If you get in the back seat a little bit, you apply a little pressure on the calf of your leg, on the cuff of the boot, that's going to shove your toe right to the end of the boot. If the boot is too big, you got a running start at a brick wall. when you do something stupid. You get in the back seat, your toe comes forward, slams into the front of the boot. Like I say, if there's room, you got a running start at a brick wall. You're going to hit the end of that boot even harder. So it's better to have a close fit, less volume in the boot, toes comfortably and gently touching the end of the boot is perfect. And then having some arch support underneath you so that your foot, it's like having a speed bump underneath you can't slide over it. It's pushing up on your arch and it's keeping your foot from shifting fore and aft in the boot. That'll cause, if any of that stuff is lacking, you're undoubtedly you're going to get a black toe. I've had black toe before, but not from skiing, from hiking.
Ouch.
A long, long downhill and constant pressure on the toes, steep trails.
You
Never
try.
had that from a ski boot, personally.
One new message. Kristen has to sign off, but she says this has been very helpful. Okay, Kevin says, how small is too small of a boot or something like that? Some friends have had toes punched out to get a smaller size.
Too small, you don't want to make it smaller, but how small is too small? When I shell fit my boots, you've heard people talk about a 1-finger fit, a 2-finger fit. My dilemma with that is, whose fingers are we talking about? My fingers are pretty small, and my index finger is maybe just slightly over a half an inch thick or wide. I don't use fingers. I use my eye, and I know what a half an inch is. And when I shell fit my own boot, I can get a pencil behind my heel when my toe is touching the end of the shell. That's adequate. You can always do little subtle things to gain a millimeter of additional space in the toe box of a boot. You can grind plastic in some cases, not all cases. For example, with that Grillamid shell that we referred to earlier, the Scarpa Grillamid boot, that is a boot that we could stretch and shape. I would never grind that boot. It's too thin. And it's thin on purpose. It's thin to make it lightweight. The boot, like I showed you, this Lang shell, this is basically a recreational racing boot. I don't have a problem grinding that thing because it's got such a thick wall. I'll go in with a grinding tool, a flex shaft Fordham tool, and with an aggressive grinding head on it and just grind away. Take some plastic out of the toe box. So how small is too small? If you put your bare foot in the shell and your toe is touching and your heel is touching, that's too small.
Oh, okay. That's very clear. So I think our last question from Will is he got new boots and insoles and they fit great, but after an hour or two, the bottom of my foot around the arch hurts and I have to unbuckle the middle to take the pressure off. I've had them adjusted, but still getting pain. Should I keep bringing them in for adjustments or try something else?
When you say you had them adjusted, did you have the footbed adjusted or did you have the boot adjusted or both?
It was the shell. I had the shell pushed out in the middle.
Okay. To the medial side, the inside of the foot?
I don't remember which side.
Okay. The foot is a bag of bones. There's 26 bones in each one of your feet, making it a fairly flexible entity, which is why we harp on people about a better footbed. We're trying to bring more balance to this equation with a better footbed. We want the foot is flexible, the boot is not. The shell of the boot is not. So we oftentimes have to shape. And I will tell you that sometimes we have to hit something 3 and sometimes 4 times before we get it just right. So don't give up. Continue going into the shop and letting them know what your issues are. If your complaint is on the bottom of your foot, the sole of your foot, it may be that you're just not quite used to that extra support. Not everybody wears arch support in their day-to-day footwear. And if you don't, and then you go for, say, a custom insole or just a drop-in trim to fit insole for your ski boot, it may take a little adaptation of your foot to reach that acceptance level until it really starts to feel good. It will happen. You just need to ski more.
Great recommendation. I'll tell my wife. Thank you.
Okay. Final question is easy. Do you sell slick socks?
So what you want to look for at Sturtevant, the only one I know of that we carry is a product called Easy On from Bridgedale, I believe. So look for the Easy On label on the packaging. And those socks are made to slip in and potentially slip out of a boot more easily. That was their intent.
Tom Wallace is the winner of the custom footbed from Sturtevant. So if Tom is still on, yay, Tom. And if not, I have Tom's email address and I will connect him with the manager. Last comment is Chris, injectable foam liners like Surefoot. What's your opinion?
They've developed some new foams that are much more user-friendly. Back in the day, a foam injected liner was pretty harsh. It took a lot of, like I was just explaining about footbeds, it took a lot of acceptance of the foot to become really natural in that boot. Foam injected liners are much, much better today. Is that Chris's question? Foam injected liners, they're great. There's one, hasn't been shot yet. That's a brand new liner, hasn't got any foam in it yet. Here's one that has been foamed. I've been using this liner for about 6 years.
Okay.
So yes, they're awesome. I love them. They're a little spendy, not that bad. They typically run about between $50 and $100 more than like an Intuition liner.
Thank you, Chris. So we got to wrap it up. Thank you all for being here, for signing on, and for being subscribers. And Brant, thank you so much for doing the boot questions. Boots are the most important part of your day on the snow, right?
Right, you are.
Yep. Your boots make or break your performance.
Okay, everybody, Larry, give us a sign off, and we have a winner for the custom footbed. And everybody else, you know what? I'm going to pick 3 random winners and I'll send you a beanie. I'll email you and ask you what color you want.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Brant. And thanks, Andrea, and everybody that joined us. Really appreciate it. And we're just halfway through the season. We got plenty more snow to come. And the second half of the season, in my opinion, is always the best half. The days get longer, gets a little warmer. You can still have some great storms, especially even through April. We're lucky here in the Northwest. A lot of good storms. So get out there and keep making those turns. And we're going to get some fresh snow for you later in the weekend and on Monday. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.